this video, we're going to talk about the big picture of the HR profession, focusing on Alberta. What is CPHR Alberta doing, and how do they and associations like them help the profession? That's coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome to HR Shop Talk, where you're going to get expert insight in HR. I'm your host, Andrea Adams. I encourage you to subscribe to the show by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen to continue learning from those who have in-depth HR experience. Today, my guest is Rod Miller, who's the head of CPHR Alberta, which has 6,000 members from Alberta, Nunavut, and Northwest Territories. He thinks people have a lot of potential, especially when connected to technology and when driving business success. Hi, Rod. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Andrea. I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Looking forward to this conversation. So I gather this is a new role for you. Can you tell me about your role and what the CPHR Alberta does?
Yeah, I sure can. So I've been in the role now about just over a year and a half. And the intention of that was to give back to my professional community. We were facing a number of challenges, both in terms of the financial state of our association, some issues around connection to our membership, and really the advocacy of our designation and the profession. And one thing I should mention is that CPHR Alberta is a member of CPHR Canada. So part of my role is to work collaboratively with our member associations across the country.
So how does CPHR Alberta relate or compare to the other provincial groups?
That's a really good question. So there are really two main bodies of HR professionals in Canada. There's the CPHR body, which includes all provinces outside of Ontario. And then there's Ontario. The governing body there is the Human Resources Professional Association of Ontario. And they have three designations. They have the CHRP, and they have the CHRL, and the CHRE. Whereas in the CPHR jurisdictions, we have only one designation, and that is the Chartered Professional in Human Resources, known as a CPHR. As jurisdictions, though, we collaborate together because we're all really mandated to drive forward the value of the profession and to really drive forward the value of a professional designation.
So it's possible that many of these organizations are sharing similar goals, but can you talk about Alberta? What are we focusing on over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, there's a number of really important things. Number one is that we, through our volunteer board of directors, they led the development of our strategic plan. And that really is the driver for us going forward, and identified some really important things for us. Number one, why we exist is for our members, and for our members to develop themselves as HR professionals. So a lot of the work that we do is ensuring that the high quality professional development programs that we put in place really align with what our members are asking for. But that's only part. One of our biggest opportunities is to continue to pursue self-regulation. And so a lot of work has been done working with the government of Alberta to help make them aware. We help advocate for the profession and help position the designation. So those are really some key initiatives for us. And obviously, the other one is to really build a very strong community. We have about 24 or 25,000 people in Alberta who self-identify as HR practitioners or HR professionals. Mm-hmm. And we have about 6,000 members. So there is this opportunity for us to really begin to expand our reach so that they can take advantage of that community building that we do, but also take advantage of all the programs that we offer for the professionals.
If you find value in this video, hit the like button. And my question for you is, are you a member of the HR Association? And what aspects of membership are most valuable to you? Tell us in the comment section below. And back to our discussion, stepping back from CPHR Alberta now, can you talk about the challenges of the HR profession more generally?
Sure. I'm going to relate that question to the most recent experience of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And COVID-19 really challenged the HR profession. Imagine the challenge of an organization moving from being in a confined space or a building or wherever it might be to all of a sudden everybody is now in some way or another remote working and trying to connect back to the organization. But what has happened, though, is that COVID-19 has really served as a catalyst for change that was already in the wind. Organizations were beginning to think about remote work. There was a demand from employees that I want to have more flexibility. I want to be able to take care of my family when I need to. So those type of concepts are already in place, and HR was beginning to grapple with them and try to figure that piece out. What COVID-19 did was just serve to be a catalyst. So we went from what was HR practice today in an organization to something completely different, driven by COVID-19. So the challenge now that faces organizations is this is here to stay. We will not be going back to fully at work working. It will be at home, it will be remote, and it brings up all these conversations around what does that look like for an organization? What are the laws and rules and regulations around that? How do we ensure a safe working environment for our people if they're working in a bedroom at home? How do we have control and management over that? How do we ensure that productivity remains? How do we ensure that engagement remains? So those type of questions now sit with HR. And I think that's the big challenge. And that is where HR is going to play a very important role in helping organizations define what that future world of work is going to look like for their organization.
So where do you think that HR is headed as a profession?
So that's a great question. And again, I'm going to relate that back to what really transpired off of COVID. HR has always been a reaction function within an organization. What COVID has really offered us as a profession is the opportunity to be a seat at the table to help drive business forward for that organization through the people resources that we have. If you look back at COVID, the experience of the pandemic, senior leaders, the executive suite were going to the HR team saying, I don't know how to deal with this. I got to figure this piece out. Can you help us? And so HR stepped in. And now all of a sudden, they put themselves in a position as a strategic advisor to that organization. And that to me then is related very closely to the professional designation. Because if you practice in HR and you want to be an HR professional, just like an accountant or an engineer or a geologist, and the designation tells others that you are competent.
So you talked about HR being at the table to drive the people side of the business. This is a generalization, but do you think organizations are ready for that?
That's a great question. In general, I would say, I think they are, but I would also say that the responsibility for that sits with the HR function. And what I mean by that is if you're going to be in that position where you're at the table, what you need to know as an HR professional is what the business is. Because what's going to happen is you're going to be called upon to make sure that you align your resourcing to the strategic goals that organization is going to have for the future.
So you talked about HR professionals having a place in the decision-making function and at sort of at a strategic level. If an HR professional is not working at that level, do you have any suggestions on how they can move in that direction?
Yeah, sure. I think it's an opportunity to learn. I think when you're joining a new organization, understanding why that organization exists and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to serve and what they're trying to sell or whatever it might be, knowing that business of the organization is really important as an HR professional, regardless of where you are and what level you are in that organization. Understanding that and then be able to communicate back to peers and to colleagues and the senior level of the staff when you get that opportunity to help them understand that you get how HR in that organization is linked to business and the role that you can play as an HR professional to help that organization achieve their goals. HR has kind of been thought of as really a risk mitigator, right? Through people, making sure that people stuff is all managed, it's all fine, it's all legal, it's all that stuff. That's great. That's super important. But at the end of the day, HR can also be that catalyst for you to move that organization into the future, because like I've said many times already, at the core of every organization is people.
And last question. So what could individuals do that both advances their own career and the role that HR plays in business?
I would say this for anybody, it really is continual learning. It's really taking a learning path and a learning journey within every organization, every experience that you have. And I don't mean necessarily formal learning. I also mean informal learning. It's connecting with other people in the organization. It's understanding the business. It's taking the opportunity to identify the gaps in knowledge that you have as an HR professional and making sure you fill those gaps through, if you're designated through professional development work, or if you're on the path to designation, continuing to explore opportunities to bolster that education that you need to continue to contribute. The HR professionals that I know and see who do very, very well are HR professionals who are dedicated and committed to lifelong learning. And so I think if I was to give one piece of advice, it would be to never stop learning.
All right. Well, thanks, Rod. That's about all we have time for. So there are plans for HR in Alberta and beyond, and you could be part of them. You might be interested in the episode on the CPHR designation itself. A link to that's in the description. Thanks for watching and see you next time.